everyone, so in this video I'm actually going to be going through some trader film. So we're going to be focusing on him being used on attack mainly, just to show how easy it is to use him on attack against some of the best defensive teams that are currently in the game. We're also going to look at all the different things that he is resilient to, because I think that there's a lot of different status effects that we don't initially think of that he can resist at a 50% rate. And at that, because his mods are additive. So that means you can get 100% resistance on this toon. It makes him even tankier and more difficult to deal with. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more content and information. So when we think of resilient, well, we don't really know what to think as of yet. The trader has yet to drop in the game, but this new specialist skill just seems amazing. So this character has a 50% resistance against all status effects, and it stacks with other resistances. So as I mentioned, if you have 2 combat mods on the trader that are resistant mods, and they're at least 50%, the trader will have 100% resistance against those 2 status effects. So just to give you guys a general idea on the things he is resilient to, we have stun, taunt, confuse, impair as well as neutralize, bleed, hemobleed, burn, maim, infection, normalize, daze, disarm, attack down, defense down, crosshairs, heal reduction, exhaust, trauma, and slow. So that's about 18 things that he's at least 50% resistant to. And when we think about it, like based on the current meta, as well as how this toon actually functions, we can kind of decipher what people will likely mod him against to have 2 resistances. So now I'm going to try and narrow down this list so that we can kind of figure out what he's likely to be modded with. So at the moment, Taunt and Confuse I'm less infatuated with, just because there are lots of different focus characters, and when a toon is focused, they ignore the effects of Taunt as well as Confuse. When we take a look at Bleed, Burn, and Maim, there's a number of toons, including Mercer as well as a Rob, who can recover from these penalties. So it's not as used just because there are so many recovery toons that are actively used on a lot of people's rosters. When we look at Impair and Neutralize, this doesn't prevent him from using his active skill, and his weapon still comes into play if you end up attacking him, so it's not necessary to mod him against Impair. Infection and Normalize, there is no mod to resist these at the moment, so that is automatically ruled out. Attack down, it's not going to be effective at all because he already has low attack. His main form of damage is his infection through his active skill as well as his weapon. Crosshairs is very conditional. It means you expect him to die and you have a reviver on your team. If you don't have a reviver, there's no point in having a Crosshairs resist mod because he's never coming back as is. When we look at trauma is an ability that's just not used very often. You know, it's very situational. You have to expect the team to have some way of recovering from penalties, and you have to be applying penalties to the toon, but because he's resistant to 50% of everything, trauma I don't think is going to be very effective. Exhaust, only if there's unnatural AP gain on the team, so if like there's a Dr. Stevens or a Gal. Otherwise, I just don't think it'll be effective either. Slow is just not an ability that's used. So this basically leaves us with about 5 status effects. So that is stun, daze, disarm, defense down, as well as heal reduction. So with stun, it might be wise to use a stun resist on him so he's 100% resistant to it, just because if he's stunned, he can't use his active skill, and he's just a primary target being a red toon to be attacked. With daze, I think daze would be really effective, a daze resist mod, because his active skill can be used on the first turn and every turn after that for 10 turns. So this could also be a super effective mod resist to have on the trader. We also have a disarm resist, which of course would work perfect with him if he was used on the defensive team, because when he rushes, he taunts 3 enemies into him, and he has a 50% chance weapon to give 25% infection to the enemies who attack him. Defense down, I don't think we'll see this as much. His defense stat is quite high, but it would still be kind of useful to have this resistance to it so that they aren't able to take him out very quickly. Heal reduction, that's hit or miss, because if someone uses a Mateo or the trader against your trader, well, obviously they will try to apply that 100% heal reduction so that no one's able to heal and recover from the infection. Now, if I had this toon, I would probably run a Daze Resist for sure, and the second mod, it would either be a Stun Resist or a Disarm Resist. I was thinking maybe a Stun Resist, just so that he would continue to be able to use his active skill and his weapon would still be in play. The Daze Resist is obviously important as well because of his active skill being so potent. And now we can get to some film where we actually use the traitor on attack. And we're going to be facing the same defensive team over and over again, and I'm just going to let this go on auto. Now, each time that I face this defense, I'm going to take away a toon so that you guys can see kind of how effective the traitor actually is on attack. Now, we can see that whenever he resists something, he gets a symbol that comes over him for resilient. I decided to use a fairly defensive offense team because the traitor does not need to apply any attacking damage, nor does anyone on the team really, in order to be effective. I am using Wangfa as an S-class because of his 100% heal reduction active skill, which of course prevents any healing from occurring. The defensive team that I put together is one of those typical tanky defenses that we see so often. I wasn't really going against any fast rushing defensive teams, only because I find that the fast rushing defensive teams aren't as effective against teams that are heavily defensive on offense. So like even the traitor could be subbed out and Mateo could be subbed in. You'd probably want a different leader so that Mateo would have that defense and HP buff. But in this case, like this team works well enough. Even by dropping out Slater, we can see that this team is having no issues with this defensive team. So even if these yellow toons had fast healing weapons, so the yellow weapon where for every fast toon on the team, you heal 2 teammates by 10% per each fast toon, and this type of weapon stacks. So if my 3 yellow toons had these weapons, 6 toons would be getting 30% HP per turn, but because Wangfa is on this team with his 100% heal reduction, this would prevent any healing. So another thing to keep in mind is that that new S-Class Dr. Stevens might be pretty effective on a defensive team now because his active skill can remove 100% heal reduction on turn 2 and so on. So just food for thought right there. In this next match, I put Wangfa as a lead instead of Pete to keep that 100% heal reduction, and we're going to see pretty much the same result over and over again. I have not tried the traitor on his own, but right now we can see how effective he is when it's just him and one other toon. Now there is something strange that's going on with the traitor at the moment, and I'm hoping this will be fixed because this will obviously impact like how he functions, but right now he is taunting the enemy when on attack when he's rushing, and that's only supposed to be part of his defensive skill when he's on a defensive team. So I'm hoping that'll be fixed beforehand, because if he comes out where he can taunt on attack as well as on defense with the minus 50% attack buff, or debuff, sorry, well, he's already a monster. He's just going to be even worse. I'm not exactly sure how I want to deal with this toon. I'm definitely going to have to play with that S-Class Dr. Stevens on my defensive team, so that if anyone runs a Mateo and Wangfa combo or the Traitor and Wangfa combo, I can at least have Dr. Stevens recover from 100% heal reduction for my team, so I have a chance at healing. And here, now I'm just going to throw in Mateo instead of the Traitor into an attack team. This is what I think a lot of top tier players and teams are currently running, something along this line, where Wangfa and Mateo combo well together because Wangfa provides that 100% heal reduction, while Mateo can apply infection to 4 toons for 3 turns. I still like the Traitor more because he can be used more in offense and defense, and his infection comes from both his weapon as well as his active skill. Now, for the next part of film, we're going to see what the Traitor is resilient to and how often it goes off. So with this first team, we're trying to disarm him. We didn't get a critical hit. He is resisting to Daze, as we just saw, and now he's using his infection ability on my Alpha. When Alpha attacks here, he's resilient to the disarming ability. He's not able to resist the taunt as well as the impair, but he does resist the bleed from Raulito. He takes the 100% heal reduction, but again, he's resistant to the Daze effect. It's really difficult to know what's going to happen in a match, so although Scopely's trying to create less RNG, It honestly feels like there's more RNG involved because you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And this type of attack team that I'm using right now is not an effective one. It has no synergy really. I'm just trying to test out different things. So like of all things actually, Glenn is pretty useful because his minus 40 AP drain is not a status effect and therefore is effective. Personally though, I don't want to be using S-Class Glenn on attack just because he's an HP and defense specialist. He is not an attacking toon. Like this is just going to slow up the way that I play, but it's not going to slow up the people who have the trader. I guess it's just going to be a little frustrating just because like anyone, as you've seen, the trader on attack is completely amazing. Like right here, he actually just resisted normalize, which is one of the main methods that, well, every single player in the game uses in order to break people's specialist skills. He resisted daze, he resisted crosshairs, and then he also has a 50% chance to infect toons that attack him. If you have a disarm resist on him, you have to rush him and not use a toon like Priya who does multiple attacks on their rush. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video. I hope you guys found this informative to how the trader is kind of going to play out in the game, and I do hope that they fix his taunting issue.